Okay. So we did this. وفروضها خمسة. I think that's where we started, right? So it says وفروضها أي أركانها خمسة عشر, right? Can anybody remind us how this works? خمسة عشر. So خمسة عشر فرضا. How does the word 15 work? How do I know
Like
that it's go ahead, yeah?
grammatically.
Yes.
It's مبني على الفتح, both words, and
Okay.
the khams disagrees in the gender from the singular of the ma'dud, and the
Okay. Excellent.
ashra agrees.
Good. And then the fatha or the sukoon on the sheen.
Fatha for masculine, sukun for feminine.
Excellent. Very good. So خمسة عشرة, right? And then we would also, if we would make it an ordinal number, you would say الفرد هذا هو الفرد الخامس عشرة, right? الخامس عشرة. Okay. Okay. بجعل الطمأنينات واحدا أحدهما نية لوجوبها في بعض الصلاة كالتكبيرة, right? And the default is that the wujub of the niyyah should be in the entire prayer, right? But why do you think we would say it's only in part of the prayer?
Difficulty.
Difficulty, right? So that's example of hajat. So again, I asked this mufti, so give me an example of al-hajat tanzit manzit al-darura. It's like blanks, right? That's a huge problem, like unbelievably huge problem, right? That means like the maddat al-fiqh is not there, right? في بعد الصلاة كالتكبير وغيره. ثانيها تكبيرة تحرم للاتباع. And so again, we have to understand what is takbir tahrim or ihram. It is the analogy of entering ihram for Hajj, right? That is the mabda, that's the default. You're coming from a ritual called Hajj, and in Hajj you're either halal or you're haram, and becoming haram to enter the state of pilgrim sanctity, you do ahrama, right? So that's called ahrama yuhrimu haram, right? This is haram, meaning you're in pilgrim sanctity. So we're doing an analogy, right? That the process to make this analogy, miftahu salati al-wudu wa takbiruha at-tahrim. How do you enter pilgrim sanctity, quote unquote, for the prayer? By saying Allahu Akbar. And how do you do tahleel? How do you exit pilgrim sanctity? By saying, giving salams, right? This is really what we mean. الاتباع مع خبرين ومع خبري quote صلوا كما رأيتموني أصلي ورواهما البخاري فيقول الله أكبر ولا تضر زيادة لا تمنع الاسم كالله الأكبر والله الجليل أكبر ولا يكفي الله كبير ولا أكبر الله ولا الله أعظم ونحوها, right? And so key concept on two levels. On a practical level, number one, the Hanafis do not allow you to say things like Allahu Akbar, right? You either have to say Allahu A'zam, Allahu Jaleel, Allahu Azim, something like that, or Allahu Akbar and say it properly. Okay, number one. And I mentioned to this some of you before. Number two, on a practical level, when you're looking at comparative fiqh, you will always make mistakes. You will always make mistakes. So this happened to me. I'm I guess a scholar in residence or whatever you call it. I'm there in a masjid and the imam says Allahu Akbar, right? And I say, oh, it's okay because the Hanafis allow any type of ta'zeem. So the person has done takbir or ta'zeem of Allah by saying Allahu Akbar. Okay, so it's fine. I do some research and I realize it's not. Speak to the specialist, the Hanafi is like, no, it's absolutely wrong. In fact, at any point of the prayer, if you said Allahu Akbar in the beginning of the prayer or in the middle of the prayer, you'd invalidate the prayer because Al Akbar is one of the names of the devil. And so it's the word, lafdan, is mitigates and works against the whole ritual itself. So you can't do that. So you can imagine how many scenarios where a Hanafi will say it's okay, the Shafis allow it. Or a Hanbali says it's okay, the Malikis allow it. And they don't. You know what I'm saying? So, for example, somebody has najasa on them, and they say it's okay. The Malikis allow you to have najasa on you in prayer. Okay, what kind of a najasa though? and where and why. So this is in principle, everything's great. You can follow the full madhahib in general, without following anyone in specific. But in reality, if that happens, it's a karitha. It's a huge problem. Because if you don't have people specialized in each madhab and sticking academically to each madhab, then you have a serious problem. Because actually nobody knows anything. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so this is again, because they're not involved in it and they don't care about it too much. The Salafi again, he's comparing A with B when he didn't realize that he didn't even know what B was, right? Let's say, there's two madhabs on this issue. I respect all the madhahib, but I believe follow dalil. And so, yeah, but you didn't even know what A was. So it's a problem, huge problem, and an observable problem. And it happens by not just, oh, Farid Ningle fell into that mistake. No, it's very normal. Sheikh Hassan Hito, when he said in his book, Shamil, he says, whenever I quote Khilaf, I do not quote it. I quote it from their books, not from our books. Doesn't say Imam Nawawi mentions the Maliki says this. He says, I'm quoting Khalil itself, right? And I can't bet, but you'll probably find mistakes there as well. You'll probably find mistakes where he's saying the Maliki say X, and you get a Maliki say that's not actually correct. Now that happens. Sheikh Nuh Kala in the Reliance Traveler, he does that in a few scenarios where he says the Maliki say this and it's not actually correct. Even though he's referencing the source, and even though he sent it to Azhar to correct the Arabic and English. Does that make sense? So this is the darurat of takhassus. Takhassus is extremely important. اوكي وثالثها قرنها أي النية بها أي بتكبيرة التحرم لأنها أول واجبات الصلاة وذلك بأن آه، يقرنها المصلي بأول التكبيرة يستصحبها إلى آخرها كما في الروضة وأصلها. أوكي. واختار في المجموع وغيره ما اختاره الإمام الغزالي أنه تكفي المقارنة العرفية عند العوام بحيث يعد مستحضرا للصلاة وصوبه السبكي والأكثرون لم يعدوا المقارنة ركنا بل جعلوها كالجزء من النية كنظيره في الوضوء. Right, that's a technical issue, but there is a fundamental issue. Right, fundamental issue is the Shafi school itself is saying when you're saying Allahu Akbar, you have to have istihdar of the ma'na of what you're doing. What is that? Prayer. What do you mean by the prayer? I mean, it's arkan. So it's there in your head. It's wujub and it's arkan are there in your head when you're saying Allahu Akbar, right? From the Hamza to the Ra of Allahu Akbar, right? And so he's saying, look, people can't focus, right? People cannot focus. So that's why Imam Ghazali, in this Ihya, it is a maqasidi, tasawwufi revolution. That's what he's doing in the Ihya. He's saying, look, come on, guys, this is ridiculous. What the fuqaha are saying is not something that people can actually do, right? And it's very, very important to do that. Very, very important to do that. Okay? Look at reality. There was another issue, not just him, but other people, about the issue where there's a hakim, okay? The ruler is a fasiq, okay? The ruler is a fasiq, sorry, the wali is a fasiq, and the ruler is also a fasiq. But the fisq of the wali is a problem, and the fisq of the wali, the governor, the khalifa, is not a problem. So what happens then is the madhab says that the wilaya tantaqil ila al-hakim. So now instead of having the father who doesn't pray, is irreligious, him marrying off his daughter, somebody who doesn't care about her, right, and is irreligious and has no emotional connection with her, is going to marry her off. So where's the masalih and maqasid there? Doesn't make any sense. So the whole issue is that we're trying to protect this girl by having somebody who's upright and righteous to marry her off. But now you've basically done it in a weird way. So they said in that scenario where it's just going to go to the hakim, to the qadi, to the whatever the ruler, and he's a fasiq. Why would you do that? Right. So this is There's many scenarios like that where Imam Ghazali looking way more at maqasid, masalih, and what's actually practical, what's doable. Okay. وثالثها قرنها النية بها أي بتكبير التحرم لأنها أول واجبات الصلاة وذلك بأن يقرنها المصلي بأول تكبيرة ويستصحبها إلى آخرها كما في روضة وأصلها واختار في المجموع وغيرها ما اختاره الإمام الغزالي أنه تكفي المقارنة العرفية يعني approximately right عند العوام بحيث يعد مستحضرا للصلاة وصوبه والسبكي والأكثرون لم full stop not وصوبه السبكي rather وصوبه السبكي it says right full stop والأكثرون لم يعدوا المقارنة ركنا أصلا بل جعلوها كالجزء من النية it's not a separate thing so this is just how you organize it it's just part of it كنظيره في الوضوء ونحوه right so the issue is with wudu it's slightly different because it's one split second right so you have that niyyah at the first part of washing the first part of the face so it's not like doing the whole face you know what I'm saying so that istishab keeping that focus throughout the whole time is not the same ونحو رابعها قيام لقادر عليه في فرض لقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم لعمران بن حسين وكانت به بواسير he had what's it called not polyps what's it called
Hamlet.
hemorrhoids thank you وكان به بواسير صلي قائما فإن لم تستطع فقاعدا فإن لم تستطع فعلى على جنب رواه البخاري وزاد النسائي فإن لم تستطع فمستلقيا right on your back with your feet facing the Qibla لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها وخرج بالقادر العاجز حسا أو شرعا right حسا it's physically impossible to do it أو شرعا if I were to do it it would break my legs right so the doctor says if you stand up like for example myself I dislocated my shoulder subhanAllah like almost 8 months ago the doctor told me, he says, you can't do push-ups for the next year. I'm like, subhanallah. I said, doctor, look, I can move, I can rotate my arm, I can do everything. He's like, well, try it and you will destroy yourself. So here, like, I can physically do it, right? I can physically do a push-up. But he said, don't do it because you're going to harm yourself. Okay? So similar kind of scenario, like, doctor, I can stand, it's fine. He said, don't do it. No, my knees are fine. Like, don't stand up. Don't stand up for more than 3 seconds at a time. Maximum. Maximum. You got to stand up to go to the bathroom. You got to stand up to move from place to place. Just keep it very brief. When you're walking, you need two people supporting you. And you're like, no, doctor, I'm fine. So shar'an, there's he's غير قادر, right? Not حسا, right? كاحتياجه في مداواته من وجع العين إلى استلقاء فلا يجب عليه القيام, right? So even though hissan it's possible to stand, but you need to, he says, lie on your back, for example, for the next 48 hours. وبالفرض النفل فللقادر على القيام فعله قاعدا أو مضطجعا, right? فإن استلقى مع إمكان الاضطجاع لم يصح, right? So you can sit down or you can lie on your side being perpendicular to the Qibla. But you cannot lie on your back with your head raised and your soles of your feet towards the Qibla, as you would do if that was the last option with the Fard. Okay, everyone's following?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. وخامسها قراءة الفاتحة لخبر الصحيحين لا صلاة لمن لم يقرأ بفاتحة كتاب أي في كل ركعة كما يدل له رواية في صحيح ابن حبان ويجب ترتيبها وموالاتها فإن تخلل ذكر قطع الموالاة so فإن تعلق بالصلاة ك... كتأمينه لقراءة إمامه وفتحه عليه فلا في الأصح, right? That does not break the continuity. You don't have to start the Fatiha all over again, right? You're saying Ameen. You were in the middle of the Fatiha. Sorry. and he was at the end of the Fatiha and he said Ameen, and he said Ameen, right? That's what's it called? That's fine. Doesn't you don't have to start the Fatiha again. Or he made a mistake and you got stuck and you're trying to help him, etc. فلا في الأصح ويقطع السكوت الطويل بلا عذر وكذا يسير قصد به قطع القراءة في الأصح. Right? So you said, oh, I've already done the Fatiha. I'm going to go to another surah. So you stopped in the Fatiha and then realized, no, I have done the Fatiha. Right? وتسقط الفاتحة أو بعضها عن المسبوق ثم إن عجز عنها المصلي لزمه قراءة قدرها من بقية القرآن etc. Okay, so who can explain what's happening with the masbuq? It doesn't really explain anything here. What's the deal with the masbuq? What is a masbuq and how does it work? So the text is very brief here, right? Isn't it? Like suddenly we're going like very low level. Suddenly like it's got like, the text has suddenly got simple, I think. Feels.
The masbuq is the person who joins the prayer late, and
Not
doesn't have
quite.
enough time
Not
to
quite.
recite the Fatiha.
That is not quite Sheikh Jawad. Anybody else? Sheikh Murabit.
Here is it referring to al-masbuq qira'atan, like someone who doesn't have enough time to read Fatiha?
In that rak'ah. Okay, so Jawad, it could be that he joined the prayer late, or it could be that he joined the prayer on time. So I joined the prayer on time with the Imam, but the Imam I stood behind the Imam in that particular rak'ah for shorter than the time it takes to recite the Fatiha at a normal pace. So I'm considered masbuq. That's one category. And the other person is called, who knows what the term is?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The question is, so there's one person who, in that rak'ah, I have not stood behind the Imam to recite the Fatiha at a normal pace. That person is called masbuq. Whether or not he's actually physically masbuq, whether or not he actually started the prayer after the Imam or not. The other person is called something else.
So would the first case be like the imam is just reciting quickly or something?
Yeah. So
Okay.
it could be that, for example, I started with you, but in your third and fourth rak'ah, you recite really fast. You stand
Hmm.
up and do the Fatiha in 15 seconds and go to ruku'. So I'm masbuq, even though I'm not masbuq,
Right.
you know. Lughatan, right? Lughatan, I'm not masbuq, but okay. Okay, so then the other scenario is called what? The other person is called, there's masbuq and then mu, it's called muwafiq, right? Muwafiq, right? So that would, linguistically, it implies that you started with the imam. Wafaqahu, you agreed with him, you did at the same time. Okay? So now the masbuq has two categories and the muwafiq has two categories. Okay? So masbuq is either muqassir or not muqassir. Muqassir is you were given 18 seconds to recite the Fatiha and you did taqsir, you fell short by doing A'udhu Billahi Shaitan Rajim, by doing something else. Okay? And then there is ghayr muqassir, you didn't. So ghayr muqassir is very easy. You turn up, Allahu Akbar, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman. And then he said Allahu Akbar. You just bow when he bows. Very simple. Right? You were only obliged to do qadr, the amount that was given to you, and you did it, and you didn't do any taqsir, you didn't fall short. Category number two, which is al-masbuq al-muqassir, is you're in a bit of a fix because you have to catch the imam in ruku' in order to catch the rak'ah. But you've used some of the time to do the Fatiha to do something else. So now you have to, if you went straight into ruku', you break the prayer by intentionally leaving a rukun. And if you don't catch the Imam in ruku', you'll miss that rak'ah. And if you don't start catching up with the Imam if you're still standing reciting the Fatiha and he leans forward after in i'tidal such that he's no longer in a standing position, he's out of the standing position, then your prayer will be invalidated. Okay? We're all familiar with this discussion?
I am unfamiliar with this part of it because why is there a risk of of missing the prayer, I guess, because you already
So
joined when he was standing. So even if
yeah. So
the imam,
basically,
yep,
what a condition for imama, a condition of salat al-jama'ah is that there's no takhalluf. You cannot lag behind the imam for two integrals for no
right.
reason. So here we say, look, you had no reason. Why? I asked you to recite for 16 seconds. You didn't do it. You did something else. And then, so now basically like you don't have an excuse, you know? It's like you call up the airplane, you say, look, I missed my flight. So why did you miss my flight? I didn't turn up at the airplane on time. It's like, what do you want? It's like we didn't do anything. So you're in a situation, you're between a rock and a hard place. If you don't catch the Imam ruku', you will miss that rak'ah. If you're not standing with the if you are not if you're not going into bowing when he's leaving standing position, then he will be two integrals ahead of you, and your prayer will be broken, and you have to start praying again. So what do you do? So let's imagine it was just A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem and they said Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Okay, khalas, you're going to go into ruku and you say, an extra ayah, half an ayah, something, the equivalent of A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, and then you catch him in ruku, no problem, right? The issue is when you enter the prayer, expecting you had time, so you did a long dua. So you've used 20 seconds to do a long dua. Right? Yeah, 20 seconds. Now, assuming that 20 seconds is not enough time to recite the Fatiha at normal pace, you now have to do 20 seconds worth of the Fatiha, which is quite a lot. Right? He's just gone into ruku'. You now have to do all this Fatiha. It's very difficult. So, mashallah, he realizes what's happening and he stays in ruku' for you. Not a problem. He leaves ruku' now. So now you've just missed the rak'ah. Okay? If you go into ruku' now, your prayer will be broken because you can't leave the amount of Fatiha that you're obliged to recite. And if you don't go into ruku' by the time he's left the standing position, your prayer will be broken because you've lagged behind too much. So what do? You've got a number of options. Okay, option number one, start praying by yourself. Niyat al-mufaraqa, khalas. Just praying by myself. That's it. I'll pray by myself. So, and no issues. Okay, that's number one. Number two is he just said, Sami Allahu liman hamidah, Rabbana lakal hamd, and you're like, oh, I will not be able to finish the Fatiha that I need to finish before going to ruku'. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to forfeit this rak'ah. That's what you can do. Just forfeit the rak'ah and just you just basically imagine you started praying just there, right? And you just basically skip it. So you just basically cancel that rak'ah, right? And you just do what he does. So you're not even going to go into ruku'. You're not going to finish Fatiha. You just khalas, I'm with him now, and just do sujood with him and make up the rak'ah at the end. Okay? So you got one of those two options. But that's a situation you shouldn't be in because A, it's stressful and distracting, and you're going to get caught up with the technicalities as opposed to focusing on the prayer. So we tell people, look, Shafi school is a Fatiha madhab. We're really addicted to the Fatiha. When you start the prayer and you're not sure if you're going to have enough time, just jump straight into the Fatiha. Allahu Akbar, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and then bow when the Imam bows. Don't put yourself in the situation when you are masbuq muqassir. Okay? Furthermore, don't teach it to awam Muslimin, aslan. Why? Because we also have other opinions in our school. We have a strong position that there's no such thing as muqassir. You didn't do anything wrong. Like saying A'udhu Billahi Shaitanir Rajeem is not wrong. Doing an opening dua is not wrong. So khalas, the masbuq bows when the imam bows. End of story. That's also a position in the school, right? As is the position, the masbuq is the same as a muwafiq, he has to do the whole Fatiha. So these positions exist, leave the awam where they are, because in reality, most awam Muslimin, like I remember for myself, it wasn't until I got to Muqaddah Hadramiyah that I understood this. So I had done like 2 books in fiqh before I understood this properly, So awam Muslimin, like what Imam Ghazali is saying, like, awam, say, khalas, what am I expected to do? 5 text books in fiqh to understand this? You're not expected to do that, right? We should encourage the awam to attend a class once a week. You should attend class once a week, keep that in their system. But in terms of the details, they don't actually know stuff. You will talk to awam Muslimin that actually don't know anything. So, just whatever. Bow when the imam bows, don't bow when the like here in Malaysia, you see this all the time. They do the Fatiha aloud, basically. They don't call it aloud, but they're doing it aloud as a ma'moom. And you will see them, they're masbuq, but they just finish the Fatiha. So they're all like, that's not the mu'tamad, you know? And so, and I remember, subhanAllah, once I was in this masjid here, and there was a mawlid, and the sheikh gave a talk, and Habib Omar representative, and then one of the teachers, he's like, I'm going to take opportunity to just explain Ahkam al-Fatiha, and it's like you could just see everyone's like lost and everyone's like whatever, you know? Like there's only, there's only so much information people can take. And they actually these kind of details are too complex. Okay? So anyway, this is for Tulab level. So we have scenario number one. You in that rak'ah, you have stood behind the imam for less time than it takes to recite the Fatiha at a normal pace, and you have not used any of that time for anything else. You just bow when the imam bows. Scenario number two, you've used it for something, you've same scenario, but you've used it for something else. You have to make up that amount of Fatiha, and you have to catch the imam in ruku', otherwise you miss the rak'ah, and you have to be going down into ruku' before he's going down into sujood. Otherwise, you will be behind him by two integrals, and your prayer will be broken. Okay, and as we explained, scenario number C and D. Scenario number C and D is you are muwafiq. In this rak'ah, I have stood behind the imam. Go ahead, Jawad.
So I think I understand the majority of the scenarios, and I also understand the two like you cannot lag behind the imam for more than two integrals. The
Mhm.
part that I'm getting a bit lost in is where you keep mentioning if you don't catch the imam in ruku', then you've missed the rak'ah. But
Correct.
isn't the ma'mum in that scenario, didn't he join while standing?
He joined while standing, yeah. So he joined, or he's regardless whether because he could have joined the prayer while standing, or he could have already been in the prayer with the imam.
So
Like
if he's already, yeah,
he came out of the sujood with the he came out of sujood with the imam. The imam finished first rak'ah and he came up with the imam, right? So he
yeah.
started the Fatiha at the same time the imam started Fatiha. After 12 seconds, the imam had finished the Fatiha and gone to ruku'.
So
So now
how is
he
he at
stood behind.
risk of,
So
yeah.
because he said, "A'udhu billahi as-sami'il alim min ash-shaytanir rajim," and he used 5 seconds for something else. And there's like, oh man, so now you have to make that extra Fatiha. Now this man, the Imam is going to go zip through ruku' very quickly. He says, Subhan Rabbil Azim, Allahu Akbar. So you see that? Like he's praying really quickly.
Hmm.
And he's not excused. So we're going to see with the Muwafiq, he could be excused with a speedy Imam. But you're not excused because you weren't obliged to do the whole of Fatiha anyway. You are just obliged to just follow with the Imam. So so the issue is because of his taqsir, because of his shortcoming. That's why the situation is awkward. Okay?
Um, Afwan. I'll try one more time, and if I don't get it, then perhaps I'll just think on it a little bit more. But
Inshallah.
my
Morad, if you just throw something at him, okay? That'll help his brain. Go ahead. No, it's very normal, Joad, right? It's very normal that you understand stuff. Mashallah, you're an intelligent individual, but just like there's these kind of things that we don't understand. It's fine. Go ahead.
my what's holding me up is not like the bit about um, speed or about lagging behind the imam or the conditions of the masbuq. It's just this one bit about catching the ruku' because from I thought that catching the ruku' meant you had to be a part of the jama'ah. You had to have joined the jama'ah um, before the
No,
imam rose from the ruku'. But in this case, you're already a part of the jama'ah. So
you're
how is
already
catching the
and
ruku' even a part of the discussion?
because it's saying yeah, because it is part of it. So that's not that fact is not correct. So just because you started the prayer with the imam doesn't mean you've caught that rak'ah. In order to catch that rak'ah, is you have to catch the imam in ruku'.
So even if I'm already a part of the Jama'ah and
Even if you're
I'm
exactly.
standing while the Imam is in, I'm in Qiyam while the Imam is in I'tidal, I've lost the rak'ah.
Yes.
Okay.
hmm Now, where's the difference in the scenario where you're muwafiq? So, muwafiq meaning I've stood in this particular rak'ah, I stood behind the imam for long enough time to recite the Fatiha at a normal pace. What happens now? You get a certificate saying you're obliged to do the whole Fatiha. With this certificate, you have more luxuries. Because you're obliged to do the whole Fatiha, you might be excused if the imam is fast. You might be excused if the Imam confused you because you used to him in Fajr reciting a surah. So he recited the Fatiha slowly. He did a long istiftah. You did a long istiftah. He did the Fatiha slowly. You listened. And then he usually pauses and then he does a long surah. What did he do today? He went straight. He didn't even say Ameen. He said, Wala Daleen, Allahu Akbar. So you're shocked. But did you stand behind the Imam for a long enough time to recite the Fatiha at normal pace? Yes. So you're now muwafiq category. So now you are allowed to lag behind the Imam for two long integrals, meaning ruku' and sujud. So You have to be catching up with the Imam before he comes out of his second sujood in order for you, in order to, if, which is pretty easy, right? It's not a
Mhm.
big deal. So here it's totally different. You have a back issue. For you to go into ruku', it takes about 10 seconds for you to just get into that position. So you miss him in ruku', it doesn't matter because you are in the muwafiq category. Okay, so you can now lag behind the imam by two long integrals, right? And when it was third, meaning ruku', sujood, and sujood, he is coming out of his second sujood, and you haven't even gone into your first ruku'. He is now three long integrals ahead of you, your prayer is invalid. I.e., you are physically not capable of praying in Jama'ah. That's what it means. Your back, because of your back issue, because your Fatiha is so slow, something like that, basically. Like it's just you're not capable of praying in the good Jama'ah, that's all. Okay? So scenarios like this, you forgot to do the Fatiha. You were busy doing Azkar. He was really fast, meaning in a surah or something like that. You were waiting to recite and he didn't give you an opportunity. You forgot. Um, you have a back issue, you know? So if you're in that category, it's totally different. Okay? So now scenario number D is I'm a muwafiq and I'm not excused. I don't have a back issue. I didn't forget to the Fatiha. I just want to stand here. You know? There's a car parking outside. I want to see what it's doing. So the Imam goes into ruku', Allahu Akbar. I had enough time to do the Fatiha at a normal pace, and I actually did do the Fatiha at a normal pace. So I have absolutely no reason not to follow the Imam. No back issue, no nothing. So now I'm just watching outside while the Imam's praying, or finishing my surah. I want to finish this page I was doing on. He would, mashallah, he gave me, the Imam usually prays for a long time, so I always try and do 2, 3 pages. I'm on halfway down my third page, I'm just going to finish it. So the Imam goes into ruku'. I have to catch the Imam in ruku' in order to catch the rak'ah. If I don't, my rak'ah will be missed. Same thing as well. If he straightens up, I got to catch him. I have to catch him. I have to be going into ruku' before he's going into sujood, meaning he's left the standing position. So if I don't do that, my prayer will be broken. Okay, so scenario number D, there's no logic to it apart from being annoying, right? Like you're not really between a rock and a hard place. You're just an annoying person. That's all. So it's not really a practical thing, right? But A, B, and C, these are practical things, right? And so again, practical way of dealing with avoiding B or A, however you want to label it, was just when you join a prayer and you don't know how things work here, just start with the Fatiha. Allahu Akbar. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Muhammad Hashir, Murabit.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you've done it before, Murabit, right?
Yeah, I also first understood it after Hadramiyat.
Yeah. So you know what I'm saying? So it just think about let's think astaghfirullah, but put yourself in the shoes of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Did the Prophet ﷺ teach Muqadda Hadramiyya to you know to random tribes
No,
that
he
came from the
didn't.
desert? No, he didn't, right? He said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli, very easy, right? He actually left things intentionally vague, right? Intentionally left things vague, right? So, so it's a totally different thing, right? So it's a huge problem. We're talking to Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya, for those of you who know him and have blessed to have his company, mashallah, very Mubarak person. He said this, he was talking about minority fiqh and all these kind of things. He said, what was it caused by? He says, basically, Tullab al-ilm, applying ilm in an absolute sense to Awam al-Muslimin. So then you get a reaction, right? The reaction to that is forget madhahib and forget this and forget that and whatever, right? Whereas it shouldn't be like that, you know? So if you in Tarim, for example, in Tarim, there's do they apply the Shafi school to a T? No, they do not apply the Shafi school to a T. It is in keeping with Orf and Ada and within reason, right? So and there's a lot of rukhas and a lot of ease and understanding priorities and these kind of things, right? The Ba'alawiyya in general, right? This is a thing, Here Malaysia is a product of it. As far as I know historically, as far as I know, Malaysia was not conquered as Muslim. Rather, these people became Muslim. through the Haba'ib basically, and people like them. Abdul Qadir Jilani's son, I visited his son in Malacca like a week, 2 weeks ago. So Abdul Qadir Jilani's son came from Baghdad and came here, Ajib, right? And so that's we have to with our Muslimin got to find what is the priorities. And a lot of things in our world as Tullab al-Ilm are not a priorities for them at all. It's not at all. And so it's a very, very different kind of thing. So you can't just get the textbook. The textbook is a tool. You got to fine tune that tool and apply it to yourself, apply it to this person, apply it to that. It's not the same thing, right? So I saw that early days of Sunni Path, um, kind of talking to people as ev trying to make the whole world Talib Ilm, you know, like those kind of early Sheikh Hamza Yusuf talks in the 90s and early 2000s, like, everyone's going to be a Talib Ilm. Yeah, everyone should be connected, right? You should encourage Awam and Muslimin. So I remember Sheikh, what's his name? He is like the only student of Dr. Ramadan Bulti's father, like his only murid in Tasawwuf. I think like his only or like one of two. So Sheikh Ramadan Bulti, right? The Dr. Ramadan Bulti's Sheikh, I can't remember his name now. His father, I can't remember his name was, but anyway, he had like one student or like one or two murids. So one of them was this individual, Sheikh Muhammad Shuqair, Sheikh Muhammad Shuqair. So he was in Jordan, and I remember seeing him teaching Minhaj al-Talibin in the masjid. But what he's doing is basically that he's bringing it down to their level, you know? He's bringing it down to their level. And he's using it as a tool, but he's not teaching Minhaj, you know what I'm saying? So there's just people there who like his style. They like him as a religious person. They like how he functions, right? They're trying to learn, it's using it to imbibe, to pass on a hal. Whereas what we're doing here is we are reading technical books and learning how to use this book. Does that make sense? It's a totally different thing, totally different function, right? So we have to understand, that oftentimes, by default, the ilm is just an excuse. You're teaching tajweed, but you're not teaching tajweed. You're teaching fiqh, but you're not teaching fiqh. Right? You're teaching something else. So we have to understand the goal, the actual educational goal, right? Those who've worked in education, it's like, what is your goal from the classroom? Okay, and how are you going to do that? And how are you going to measure that? And so you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to teach this Hashid Sharqawi. Like, what's the point, right? Whereas for the Ammi, the average person is very, very different kind of goals, very, very different kind of goals, and it can vary from place to place and time to time, right? You know. SubhanAllah, sometimes you can be talking about respect and people like really listen. Other times talking about respect towards parents, and it's like that's the worst thing you could possibly say ever because it's not the environment, you know? So imagine talking to Eminem and talking to him about respect towards parents. Is he going to be very receptive? I don't know, you know? So actually, what we don't realize, and maybe some of you have realized, but what we don't realize is that there's a lot of pain for the Awam Muslimin and a lot of shubuhat in their head, a lot of doubts, a lot of problems, a huge fitan in their head. They can't necessarily express them. There's things like Islam is not nice, Islam is not relevant, Islam is backward, Islam is oppressive. So that's your actual goal as opposed to fiqh, right? Does that make sense, guys? So now you're coming along with like explaining 4 different types of reciting Fatiha behind the Imam, you know? It's like Habibi, right? You should focus on the Fatiha itself. What does the Fatiha mean? And perfecting the Fatiha. Like, can I focus in the Fatiha as opposed to the technicalities? Because the average person is just not useful at all, right? Not to say it's not useful, a'udhu billah. I'm just saying for the average person, not useful. As an analogy, right? Murabit goes to Yemen, okay? And his goal is to get the people of Yemen to pronounce Gat, Qat, right? You know what Gat is, Murabit?
Uh, yeah, it's similar to tobacco, but it's a completely different plant, but they chew it.
Yeah, but it's basically so you're focusing on trying to change him from Gaf to Qaf. Are you trying to say that the qaf is not sacred? It is sacred. A'udhu billah. Pronouncing the qaf is a sacred ritual. It's a very important thing. But do you know how destructive qat is to Yemeni society, economy, society, agriculture? It's really, really bad. So, like, you're focusing on the total wrong thing. Not because what you're focusing on is irrelevant, astaghfirullah. It's not irrelevant, but it's just not a priority at all for what we're talking about. Does that make sense? Everyone's
Yes.
following me? Yeah. Okay. So he says, ولا تسقط فاتحة بعضها وتسقط الفاتحة أو بعضها عن المسبوق. So we, again, three أقوال in our madhab. The masbuq, and then what does even the masbuq mean? So I mentioned, for example, the relied upon position is the masbuq is the person who in that rak'ah, he hasn't stood behind the imam, right? For not long time to recite the Fatiha at normal pace. So in reality, if you go back in the madhab, that's not going to be the case because they're going to say masbuq is the one who came late. So then the illah is it because he came late or is it because he stood behind the imam for not enough time to recite the Fatiha at normal pace? So if you look at the whole discussion there, it's a bit messy, right? So that's useful to say messy, but also you say, look, khalas, there's debate on this issue, right? You know, so but in general, for the masbuq, however you define him, there's three issues. He has to do the Fatiha like the muwafiq. He doesn't have to do any of the Fatiha, right? So yeah, تسقط الفاتحة كلها, right? In the third position, no, he has to do the qadr. He has to do the amount that he was given, right? جمعا بين الدليلين. Okay. ثم إن عجز منها المصلي لزمه قراءة قدرها من بقية القرآن. Right? So he knows some other surahs. ولو مفرقا خلافا للرافعي في قوله إنه لا يكفي المفرق. Right? So i.e. So here what does he mean by مفرق? So he says ولو مفرق معتمد. It doesn't explain it. But so basically if you can imagine مفرق, it could be like, for example, an ayah here and an ayah there. What else could it mean though? When you say مفرق?
Spaced out, like it's paused, like there's gaps in between the qira'ah.
Yeah, but what if I just took the words from different surahs? So it says huwa, for example, huwa, anta, ala. You know what I'm saying? So now I took
Yeah.
words from different surahs and I made the equivalent of Fatiha. That's mufarraq. So what do you mean? Okay. So there's a concept that we have to do is whenever something is said, we always have to go back, take three steps back. You have to go before Rafi'i, okay, Ghazali, Juwaini. What are they saying? Baghawi, Royani. Go to Rafi himself, see what he's saying, and then see what the rudud are. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you can't really do dabt of what's being said, right? So you have to, yeah, this is like you have to have this organic system. So you cannot just rely on a book like this, usually, right? Often you can. Often you can just be like, خلاص, I'm just with the mutaakhirin. But he says something, you got to go back, find out what he's being said. Does that make sense? Step back a little bit. Look at Rafi'i. He's saying, what does Rafi'i say in Sharh al-Saghir? Go back, and you come back again, right? So in reality, everything that, whenever we're doing bahth, it's actually quite a long task in reality, right? It's quite a long task to do a dabt of a mas'ala. Uh, إلا إن عجز عن المتوالي. So it doesn't mention here متوالي. It doesn't mention it. So anyway, see if it mentions it here. إلا إذا عجز عن ثم إن عجز عن ذلك لازم قراءة قدرها من ذكر أو دعاء in Arabic, right? So something else. If you can't do any of the Quran, then you do that. ويجب كونه سبعة أنواع كما قاله البغوي في الذكر ومثله الدعاء. And he says في الكتاب ومثله الدعاء, and then Uh, ويعتبر تعلقه بالآخرة, right? And it's got to be something to do with the آخرة. Oh, Allah help my neo, something, yeah. وتعامل بذلك أولى من قول أصل سبح بقدرها. ثم من عجز ذلك وقف بقدرها, right? وقف بقدرها. So this is a current theme, right, that happens when we're trying to look at stuff. It's trying to cut things up. So when you're standing doing the Fatiha, is standing and doing the Fatiha, are they one thing or are they two things? Right? And so he was saying it's two things, right? So therefore, you can't do A, so you still have to do B. You know what I'm saying? So سقط الكل فثبت البعض, right? But if you look at standing and doing the Fatiha as one, okay, you say سقط الفاتحة سقط الفرض فسقط محله, خلاص, nothing's obligatory. You don't have to do anything, right? And so then what's going to happen is we're going to copy and paste this discussion to missing the first tashahhud, right? So when you say, for example, you missed the first tashahhud, ثم تلبس بفرض, and then you got engaged doing a fard. You mean you reciting or you started standing? So we're going to say, look, there's two actions here. One is standing, one is reciting. So as soon as you get to the standing position, خلاص, يحرم العود, you can't go back. But the Hanbalis, for example, they're going to say, no, 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 guys, look, the standing is not the arukun. The standing is just the mahal, right? So it's not a thing. Does that make sense? So the Hanbalis, they say, no, if he starts reciting, then he can't go back down again, right? But the issue is basically how we look at something. Is it two things or is it one? Does that make sense? So here we're saying, no, it's two things. So سقط فرض القراءة وثبت, right? وثبت فرض القيام. ثم إن عجز عن ذلك وقف بقدرها أي الفاتحة, لأن الميسور لا يسقط بالمعسور ولا يترجم عنها بخلاف التكبيرة لفوات الإعجاز فيها دونه, فإن كان أخرس حرك لسانه وجوبا. Why? الميسور لا يسقط بالمعسور. So you can see, for us, الميسور لا يسقط معسور is very interesting. What does it mean to the Awam Muslimin? Like, what is the mentality? Go ahead, Abu Rabit.
I didn't understand what the question was in relation to like the awam for the
So,
qaida.
here, when you're talking to us, we're talking about, can we break down things into two things? And if you can't do all of it, can you still have to do some of it? Da, 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 da. That's what we're talking about here, right? So the point
Yeah,
is, even if you can't make any sounds, you still have to move your tongue because we can see it as two different things. And
yeah.
and so that's a principle. Now, when you apply it to Awam al-Muslimin, right? How is this as a da'wah? Like, what does it mean what does it mean, that concept? الميسور لا يسقط بالمعسور. What does it mean for the average Muslim who's struggling with their deen?
Like just do what you can, basically.
Exactly. So he's like, forget it, right? So this is a classic thing that happens. Oh, just forget about it, right? You know? So don't like, I don't pray anymore. Why? I live too far away from a masjid. It's like, Habibi, just because you can't pray in the masjid doesn't mean you stop praying, right? You know what I'm saying? So they
Yeah,
will do these things. Oh, I stopped praying, so I started eating pork. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? Do everything you can, right? Try your best. Keep trying. Try your best, right? So giving up, this is from listening to shaitan. Oh, don't bother then, you know? And you'll see a lot of people do that. Like they'll come from a certain environment and it's like a culture shock, right? And it's like, suddenly like, oh, we're in America now. It's like nothing applies, you know? It's different. So it's a huge problem. So this you can see the difference in talking to using a book like this or using fiqh for awam Muslimin, finding out what's actually helpful, right? As opposed to, talking to somebody else. Two different concepts totally. Um, وإن عجز وقف بقدرها أي الفاتحة لأن الميسور لا يسقط بالمعسور ولا يترجم ولا يترجم هو لا يترجم عنها, it is not translated. لا يترجم عنها, the prayer does not translate. It could be either. بخلاف التكبير لفوات الإعجاز فيها دونه فإن كان أخرس حرك لسانه وجوبا. So the takbir, you say, then the Muslim says God is greatest. And that's fine. You can't say Allahu Akbar, fine. Say God is greatest. But with the Fatiha, it doesn't count. You just have to stand there. وسادسها ركوع للأمر به في الكتاب وخبر الصحيحين وأقله للقائم أن ينحني قدر بلوغ راحتيه ركبتيه أي بعضها. Right? So your palm could touch some of your knee. He says راحتيه تثنية الراحة والمراد بها بطن الكف خاصة فلا يكفي بلوغ الأصابع. Right? But yeah, so it doesn't say بعض, it comes in other places. So you can look in Bushra Kareem or any other else, you should be able to see it there. So when you say راحتيه, it doesn't mean your whole palm. It means some of your palm, right? But it does specifically say not your fingers. Okay. قدر ركوع راحتيه ركبتيه بأكمله وأكمله تسوية ظهره وعنقه ونصب ساقيه وأخذ ركبتيه بيديه وتفرقة أصابعه للقبلة. So the fingers should be slightly apart and they should be in line facing the Qibla. So if you open them totally, they're not facing the Qibla anymore. But they basically, you're not doing a dam, you're not putting them together, you're separating them slightly and they're facing towards the Qibla. Right? If you were to draw a line down towards your feet and out along the ground, it would go towards the Qibla. وسابعها اعتدال الأمر به في الخبر السابق وثامنها سجود للأمر به في الكتاب والخبر الصادق بوضع الجبهة مكشوفة ووضع اليدين والركبتين وأطراف القدمين ولو مستورة لخبر الصحيحين أمرت أن أسجد على 7 أعظم الجبهة or two جبهتي واليدين والركبتين وأطراف القدمين ويكفي وضع جزء من كل واحد منها والاعتبار في اليد ببطن الكف سواء أصابع والراحة. So notice, so the inside part of your hand, so basically the area that would break your wudu, right? If you touch private parts. So ببطن الكف, not بطن الراحة. وفي الرجل ببطون الأصابع. Okay, everyone's following?
Yes.
Yes.
Sheikh Muhammad?
Yes.
Okay. ويسن كشف اليدين والرجلين ويكره كشف الركبتين. Right? ويكره عدم كشف اليدين as well. So it says ويسن كشف اليدين أي للرجل وغيره فيسن المرأة كشفه على المعتمر. قول الرجلين محل في حق رجل ويكره it doesn't mention here, but other places mention it's offensive to cover your hands. Right? Unless there's a reason. You're spraying in the snow, it's freezing. So ويسن كشف اليدين والرجلين ويكره كشف الركبتين فلو قطع الكف أو القدم لم يجب وضع الطرف الباقي. Okay, so this is not the same as washing, right? So because you're not doing, it's not the same kind of thing, right? So you have no lower leg. Do you have to put your knee or the stump on the ground? No, you do not. Right, and also there's a position of Imam Rafi'i that you only have to put your forehead on the ground and that's it. So again, you see somebody praying and their toes are not done properly. He's moved with hand, he was scratching his knee. So he went into sujood and there was tuma'nina of his whole body, but his hand only didn't do tuma'nina because he was scratching something. He didn't actually put his hand in the place and keep it there. It doesn't matter, right? That's according to Imam Rafi and it's a strong position, Okay, والتاسعها جلوس بين السجدتين للأمر به في خبر الصحيحين وعاشرها طمأنينة بحيث ينفصل رفعه عن هويه. Sheikh Muhammad Hashir, Huwi. We did this yesterday. What pattern is that on? Huwi and Juthi and there's another word. I don't know which class we saw it in. Mudi. Mudi as well. Mudi, Juthi, Huwi, and there's another word like that. It's on the pattern for all. Okay, it's on the pattern for all. So it's basically this weird thing that happens. So with Juthi, it's a bit weird because and it happens with IC as well. So asan, the plural of asan, asa, stick, is IC. So it's actually in the pattern for all. So it becomes usu, and then it becomes usi, and then it becomes IC. So these words as well. So they are originally on the pattern for all because they have a ya at the end. The ya pulls the wow into a ya and kind of a ya kasra sound. So you get this pattern for right? So if it was fa'i, like aliyun, that's easy. Aliyun. But this is on the pattern for all. So it has that dhamma, right? Al-huwi lis-sujud, right? Al-luqi, that was it in the Sharh al-Tirmidhi. Al-luqi, luqi, from laqiya yalqa, luqiyan. Hawa yahwi, uh, huwiyan, right? As opposed to as opposed to hawiya yahwa, hawan, which means to love something, right? Or folly, different word. But this is huwi, and juthi, and si, etc. So on the pattern for all, okay, on the pattern for all. So he says بحيث ينفصل رفعه عن هويه فيها. Right, so you go into ruku' and you pause, right? So it says here وأقلها أن تستقر أعضاؤه وإنما عدها ركنا واحدا في محلها in different places أربع لتجانسها كما عدوا السجدتين كذلك. Right? So notice it doesn't say doing a subhanallah, right? It doesn't say doing subhanallah. The point is you just pause. Right? So when you say, oh, it's got to pause long enough to say subhanallah, well, you might say subhanallah very quickly, right? So the point is a clear pause. You go into position and you stop. And what does that mean then, Sheikh Murabit? Right? When I'm telling your child, look, when you go into ruku', you got to pause. What are you actually telling him? Like,
Like to
what's the
not
point? Yeah, what's the point in pausing?
to separate the ruku' from the other arkan to like make it seem like it's a rukun.
Okay, why would it? Why? What does that even mean? What's the point in doing that?
Um,
Because you can
I'm
guarantee
not
that
sure.
most Muslims, they just understand you do this because you do this. You know, like I've actually heard a parent say to this child, "We pray because we're Muslims." That doesn't mean anything, does it? Like, okay, well, why am I Muslim then? So if I wasn't Muslim, I wouldn't pray. Say, okay, I won't be Muslim then. It's like, no, you pray because you recognize you have a creator, etc. So why do you pause? In order to ponder and experience the feeling, right?
Um,
Hi, mum, bye, mum. That was a bit rude, isn't it? Right? Talk to
yeah,
her. I've seen your mum for like 2 years. Sit down with her, have a conversation. You don't say, hi, mum, bye, mum, put the phone down on her. Similarly with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if you're praying properly, you go into ruku', you feel it. Stand up, feel it. Right? There's supposed to be an emotion that you're supposed to get at each stage, right? For your benefit, right? So that's where you're learning. So you're pausing. Oh, you gotta, you gotta experience what it's like to bow before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? As opposed to, oh, that's because that's what you have to do. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't mean anything. Right? That's because you have to. Because so with a Sheikh, who is it? Uh, Sheikh Tamim Ahmadi is a Deobandi Sheikh in the Bay Area. He he told me many times, like, with Awan Muslimin, got to follow the way of Taha, what's the name?
Mulana Ashraf Ali Tanwi.
I know, yes. Why? What does he do? He explained the deen to people. Why? In principle, you should say, well, because Allah told you, right? And because of your extreme fanat fillah, because you don't see anything else in existence, you would just do exactly what Allah tells you to. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also appeals to people's nufus and to people's logic, right? And say, look, there's a reason why. Why should I wear hijab? Tell me why I should wear hijab. Tell me what it's like. Why should I not have a girlfriend? Why should I not have a boyfriend? Why should I not drink? Explain me what it's like, right? I understand that it's good for me because Allah says it, but help me, right? Don't expect me to have that strong level of iman because Allah says. Because Allah says, that helps Murabit. Murabit doesn't need to know more than that because he has a alaqa with Allah. The alaqa is already there, and he just the details. Is it sunnah or not? That's it. That's all. It's just like superficial input. But with Awam Muslimin, we are talking to non-Muslims. This is something that again Sheikh Tamim told me, and it's like subhanallah, it's a huge disservice to talk to Muslims as if they're Muslims. Like you really harm them. Talking to them as if they're Tulab al-Ilm, talking to them as if they're religious. It's really harmful. Whereas if you talk to them, you're treading. How would you talk as if you're talking to a non-Muslim? Oh yeah, because they don't understand this, and they don't, yes, that's the case with them. That's the case with Muslims. They don't understand the deen like at all. It's like it's insane. Religious people in the masjid who pray at Fajr do not understand the deen. So you're talking to them as if you would talk to a non-Muslim, treading very, very carefully. Everything that's possibly understood is misunderstood. You know what I'm saying? Like once I was teaching in a class after Fajr, it's a different group. People after Fajr is not the same people after Isha, right? Not the same kind of people. So I was explaining the difference as a dalil dhanni and a dalil qat'i, and how al-hadith al-ahad la yufid illa dhann. The guy, literally one of the people, a religious man, walked out. And not just a religious man who has very, very stressed in his life and has anger issues and has smoking issues, but is religious and does try and do the best, right? He walked out, he's like, oh, you are trying to make people doubt Islam. You understand? It's like, I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to talk to you as a mature adult who understands the difference between the dhan and the qata'. And people do not understand the difference between the dhan and qata'. Like, people actually don't understand many things, like a ridiculous amount of things. The amount of things that they understand is actually ridiculously few. And it's a miracle that Muslims are still Muslims, right? So we have to, when you're explaining the deen to me, you say, this is a rukun. Ibn Hajar said it stronger in this book. Okay, that means something to me. It doesn't mean anything to anybody, to most people. What does it mean? The Prophet ﷺ who loved you told you to do this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who wants good for you told you to do this, and this is going to help you with this, right? What does it feel like to wear hijab? What does it feel like to not wear hijab? What does it feel like to pray? What does it feel like not to pray? I think it was Ibn al-Jawzi said, they said, don't tell people, well, Ibn al-Qayyim, sorry. Ibn al-Qayyim said, don't tell people the punishment of not praying. Tell them what they're missing out on by not praying. You know? And this is back then, right? This is back then. Okay, so what do you miss out on if you don't pause in ruku'? Oh, an amazing feeling, You have to pause because there's an amazing feeling. Right? So very important to understand these things. وحادي حاد أحد عشرة حادية عشرة, right? تشهد أخير لما روى البيهقي بإسناد صحيح عن ابن مسعود شيخ محمد حاشر. What is wrong with this? لما رواه البيهقي بإسناد صحيح عن ابن عباس.
There is a lot missing between Bayhaqi and Ibn Abbas.
Yeah, so even if it's sanad sahih, like how can it even be a sanad sahih? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's this issue, okay, that those of you familiar with hadith is like once you get past like the year 250, 230, 300, something like that, you know, 200, 250, something like that, you don't get tafarrud. So you don't find somebody like, for example, Tirmidhi only narrating hadith from one person. He may cite only one scholar, but he's not literally saying that there's only one scholar that has ever told me this hadith. And if it does, he's saying this is weird. He's like, there's only one person who's ever told me this hadith, and this sheikh of mine in in Karkh in Iraq, or this sheikh of mine in what's it called in Egypt. That's odd. It's a problem. So when there's tafarrud, so when you're talking about Bayhaqi passed away. Correct me if I'm wrong, Muhammad Hashiz, 450, is it? I thought it was 450.
It's
Um,
458.
458. So between him and the
Yes.
Prophet we're talking 450 years. The standard is going to be very long. So what you might find, for example, is let's say, for example, there's a hadith, the hadith is well known, and there's a version of it in Bayhaqi, for example, that's something different. But it's like the hadith is only in Bayhaqi. The fact that it's only in Bayhaqi is a problem. Jalaluddin Suyuti, in his Jam' al-Saghir, I believe, in his introduction to Jam' al-Saghir, he says, whenever I quote mutaakhirin, I'm telling you that it's weak by the fact that it's narrated by mutaakhirin. So it's in Ibn Asakir. When's Ibn Asakir? Ibn Asakir is afterwards. Ibn Asakir is 5th century, isn't he? Ibn Asakir. Same time. Yeah, 499. I mean, no. He's way late. He's a century later. My apologies. He's a century later. So that's like really bad, right? So he mentioned that. He said it's only in Ibn Asakir in Tarikh Dimashq. It's like the fact that it's only there is a problem, right? Ibn Asakir. Well, who else did you mention? Hakim Tirmidhi, I think as well. Who is not that late. Hakim Tirmidhi. He's like 4th century something. No, he says in Nawadir al-Usul by Hakim Tirmidhi. So he's when? 932. I don't know what that is in. But yeah, so here it says so he's not he's even in the 3rd century, right? So he's saying the fact that it's in Nawadir al-Usul by Hakim al-Tirmidhi tells you the hadith is weak already, right? And things like that. The Tarikh of Qazwin by al-Rafi'i, something that's late. So Bayhaqi, the fact that it's only found in Bayhaqi is a problem in and of itself. Now, our late scholars will not say things like that. Notice how he just phrases it. It says, لما رواه ولما روى البيهقي بإسناد صحيح and there we go, done. خلاص سند صحيح. You don't hear them doing things like that, right? They just خلاص, there we go. But in reality, it's a problem, right? That if there's tafarrud, like this hadith is only found by the only people in Rayta are like the shuyukh of Bayhaqi. That's a huge problem. That in itself, it tells us the hadith is what we call gharib, right? In the linguistic and a terminological term, right? And we see this for those of you who want to see more discussion. Look in again, Sharh, the big introduction of Jam' al-Saghir by Imam Suyuti, and also look in Muqidah, right? Look up the words munkar and gharib, or etc. Right? So Imam al-Dhahabi, he says you will find a sheikh in the year 200, 250, he will have 2 million hadiths. One or two of them are unique. One or two of them. Right? That's it. So basically, by the beginning of the 3rd century, the year 200, 250, that kind of time, all information has become widespread. And if it hasn't become widespread, that is suspicious and problematic. Does that make sense? So we can apply that concept to here to Bayhaqi. But again, the late scholars won't mention anything there. They won't do that. They just quote it. Right? عن ابن مسعود قال كنا نقول قبل أن يفرض علينا التشهد السلام على الله السلام على فلان فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تقولوا السلام على الله فإن الله هو السلام لكن قولوا التحيات لله etc. Right? والمراد فرضه في الجلوس الأخير لا في الأول لخبر الصحيحين أنه صلى الله عليه وسلم قام في ركعتين من الظهر ناسيا ولم يجلس فلما قضى صلاته كبر وهو جالس فسجد سجدتين قبل السلام ثم سلم. So the point is the Prophet ﷺ missed the first tashahhud, and had it been a rukun, إذ عدم تداركه يدل على عدم فرضيته. Right? There we go. وعدم تداركه يدل على عدم فرضيته. Right? وتجب الموالاة بين كلمات التشهد والترتيب بينها. والثانية, so ثاني is معرب. So you say والثاني عشرة. مررت بالرجل الثاني عشر. Not الثانية عشرة. So the word عشرة itself is mabni, but the word ثاني is not. So اثنين, even if it's part of, even when you say 12, you say رأيت اثني عشرة رجلا. ورأيت اثنتي عشرة بنتا. Right? So the word second, or two, right, or 12, or here, or 12th, the two section of it, the thani, is mu'rab. Okay, mu'rab. Okay, makes sense. مررت بأحد عشر رجلا وباثني عشر رجلا وبثلاثة عشر رجلا. Making sense, guys?
Yes.
مرابط?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, so this is ثالثة عشرة. It's 13th. ثالثة عشرها, that's 13th. That's mabni. ثاني عشرة, ثاني عشرة has sukoon because it's going to be مرفوع, like saying جاء القاضي. Right? وثاني عشرها صلاة على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعده للأمر بها في خبر الصحيحين. وقوله بعده أولى من قوله فيه. والثالثة عشرها تسليمة أولى. Right? And again, some scholars, you find them, they'll say you can't use the pattern فعلى unless it's definite, which is not true. Right? So you say, for example, Fatima al-Kubra, but you don't say Fatima Kubra min Zainab. You say Fatima Akbar min Zainab. Right? But you can say Bintun Kubra, an older daughter, right? And here's an example of it. Taslimatun Ula, right? So the pattern fu'ala is used in indefinite as well. It's just not used as a khabar, right? وتسليمة أولى لخبر مفتاح الصلاة الوضوء وتحريمها التكبير وتحليلها التسليم. ورواه أبو داود والترمذي بإسناد صحيح. أما التسليمة الثانية فالسنة كما سيأتي، فيقول السلام عليكم، ويكفي السلام عليكم السلام as well. لا what is it? لا سلام عليكم لعدم وروده. Right, so in the tashahhud you can say السلام عليك أيها النبي or سلام عليك أيها النبي. You can say both لوروده because it comes in hadith. Whereas here you cannot, right? You cannot say salamun alaykum. You have to say assalamu alaykum. Assalamu alaykum. Right? لعدم وروده. ورابع عشرها جلوس للثلاثة الأخيرة وذكره في الأخير أخيرين منها من زيادته. Right, so that you do it in the taslim and that you do it in the salat and process and you do it in tashahhud. وخامس عشرها ترتيب للفرض المذكور للفروض المذكورة المشتمل عدها على قرن النية بالتكبيرة وإيقاع التحرم والقراءة في القيام والتشهد والصلاة على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم والسلام في الجلوس. ودليل هذا والذي قبله الاتباع مع خبري صلوا كما رأيتموني أصلي. So the Prophet prayed, and not just prayed, he said, pray as you see me pray. فلو تركه عمدا كأن سجد قبل ركوعه بطلت صلاته أو سهوا فما بعد المتروك لغو. Right? And this is what we mean by bid'ah. Right? So when a Salafi says bid'ah, he's talking about Mawlid. When we're talking about bid'ah, we mean this. Right? Like, So what's the hadith? فهو رد. What's the hadith? ليس عليه. What's the hadith? ليس عليه أمرنا فهو رد. من عمل عملا ليس عليه أمرنا فهو رد. That's what we mean here. Right? So when you say Mawlid is a bid'ah, meaning there is no slot in the Sharia to put it into. Right? So here you've done ruku' before the Fatiha. Or you've done sujood, it's invalid. It's no valid place to put it. Right? There's no valid place to put it. Whereas the Mawlid is a valid place to put the Mawlid. What is Mawlid? Dhikr, that's the recommended. Gathering for khair, recommended. Telling stories, recommended. Feeding food, recommended. Singing songs, permissible. You can put them each in a slot. So it's not a bid'ah. Whereas bid'ah is like this, like that doesn't count, right? Does that make sense? So the concept of bid'ah is right, the application is totally wrong.
Is it also like that? Another problem is that they count the Salaf, the first generation, as like they don't count them as bid'ah what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Unlike in Shafi, we consider everything that's done beside
exactly.
others besides Prophet ﷺ as bid'ah.
Exactly. So we count it. So basically, an example that Imam Shafi gives is Taraweeh. The Prophet didn't do 20 rakats of Taraweeh, and that's a bid'ah hasana of the Salaf, and we follow them in that. Right? Whereas other scholars might say it's tashri'. That basically, like the Salaf can do tashri', something like that. Right? That's essentially what you're saying. When you say the Salaf didn't do it, you're saying that the Salaf can receive revelation, really, if you think about it. Like on a very technical level. You're saying that the Salaf can do things that others can't, which is true and not true, right? So they don't really say that. They're not like that would be kufr, right? But you know. So in reality, the people, the madahib, like particularly the Malikis and the Hanafis, were very strict on bid'ah. It's really from min bab sadd al-dhara'i'. It's min bab sadd al-dhara'i'. It's a different kind of thing, right? Which is totally makes sense, right? When you say, for example, in a place, Mawlid is where you meet a girlfriend. Imagine that, for example. Like every year we have a Mawlid, and basically everybody is free mixing, and this is the time to like meet your girlfriend, you know? So then we could ban Mawlid in that culture, in that time and place, because it's connected to X, connected to Y, you know? So that's min bab sadd al-dhara'i'. But the Salafi argument is more fundamental than that. It's not sadd al-dhara'i'. It's not that you are blocking the means of haram, is that it's essentially they're applying what we're applying here is that it is essentially invalid because you've created ikhtira' naw' jadid min al-ibadah, right? And so we say, yeah, 100% like this. Like this, that sallu kama ra'aytumun usalli, you've got to do it in the same way. It's a ritual, it has to be done this way. But we say dhikr is not a ritual. Dhikr is not a ritual. Praising the Prophet is not a ritual. It doesn't have a shakl. It doesn't have a particular, taqus. It doesn't have a particular shape to it, right? It's just something general, like you can do it however you want. So dhikr is recommended, serving food is recommended, reminding each other of the Prophet doing salawat is recommended. Go ahead.
But the problem with them is they are the ones like we so the one of the argument like is that they say the dua jama'ah after the prayer, part of prayer, like it's bid'ah. But the problem is like nobody has specified that we are supposed to do dua at that time. It is them that specify that like dua cannot be done at that time.
And so by analogy, what's it called? Iltizam qira'ah wahida is also bid'ah. Did the Salaf stick to one qira'ah?
No.
No. Did they all finish on, juz so and so ends here? Open the Mus'haf, it's full of bid'ah. The whole thing is full of bid'ah. The signs of waqf, all these things, right? So, it would be nice, right? Like if you think about trying to make the Mus'haf more reflective of the Salaf, you should have more variation. There should be in each masjid, people should recite in different ways, right? And people should stop at different places to give that variation, right, of the Salaf, like the biodiversity of the Salaf, if that makes sense, right? But the lack of biodiversity is not haram. In fact, there's a huge mafsada in that. When you have people, let's say you're going to go to Kenya and everyone's doing a different qira'ah, right? So Muhammad Hashi is going to go and spend, instead of studying, he's going to spend even more time learning, he learns a 10 qira'at so they can teach each of his siblings a different qira'ah in order to increase the biodiversity of the religion in Kenya to make sure that it looks more like the Salaf, because the Salaf had difference, So I know what they're saying. They're like, look, you've basically the shekel, the form of your deen is different to the way of Salaf. Yeah, but that's the way they're looking is wrong, right? The way they're looking is not right. Like, it's like I know you know what they're saying, right? Like the Salaf, for example, they tarawih be different. Some people praying 8, some people praying 20, some people saying 25, 27, 40, right? So it's kind of like that beautiful, ambiguous nature of the Salaf. But that doesn't mean clarity and system is wrong. That's not true. That's not true, particularly because of what else it leads to and difference of time and place. So, for example, like a country, you know, like here, for example, in Malaysia, let's take Malaysia as a specific example. The Mawlid is a national holiday. So, are you going to make, I don't know if Christmas is a national holiday, but are you going to make Diwali a national holiday and Chinese New Year a national holiday and not make the Mawlid a national holiday? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, good point, right? And Allahu Alam, that's actually what it comes from. Is in the time of the Fatimids, and some can double check, the time of the Fatimids in Egypt, the Fatimids, Shia, Ismailiyya, they were honoring all sorts of several celebrations, ridiculous kinds of celebrations. All right. And so then in contrast to that, it's like, yeah, let's celebrate, let's do a Maulid, and then let's feed people, and people love the process and etc. Right? So, you know, it's like having a salah party on your birthday. That's a bid'ah, right? Should you have a salah party on your birthday? No, but I'm doing it because you're at school, everyone's having a birthday party. I'm saying, yeah, you can have a birthday party. You can have gifts that are even better than theirs, but it's going to be a salah party because now you're 7 and you've got to pray 5 times a day. Or now we're celebrating the fact that you're 8 and you've got to pray and you're praying 5 times a day. You know, we celebrate something different. So it's a bid'ah, but it's what are we doing it? So the point is, going back to the issue is, in our world, and when talking about sihha and fasad and all these issues, it's real, but you're just applying it totally the wrong way. Like we do with it all the time. When we say, for example, you gargled while you were fasting, and we say there's an udhr غير صحيح لا يعتد به, the same thing. Like the Prophet ﷺ forbade you from doing that, so therefore لا يعتد به, right? Because it's a bid'ah, because it's something wrong, right? You do something wrong, لا يعتد به. العاصي بسفره, right? Same thing. So your travel is considered a non-travel because you're sinful by traveling, right? Countless scenarios like that, right? Um, so that's what we're talking about, and their application is totally off, right? It's totally off, right?
And Sheikh, isn't like the reason why we are having, like, for example, one qira or one madhab in an area is because one reason is like which time we ended up resolving the disagreements. We're like, so the more opinion that is agreed upon, people end up following that, and then that becomes something that we forget about the other opinions with time.
Yeah,
And also the second thing is like during the early days, like we have fewer people but more experts, while now
exactly,
we have more people and less experts in terms
exactly.
of
Yeah.
the thing.
أجزاء خير مرابي correct the hadith من أحدث في أمرنا, so not من عمل. I think there's 2 versions of the hadith, but anyway, so when أحدث, and I'm mixing the 2 up. So من أحدث في أمرنا منه ما ليس منه فهو من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد, right? So the point is, that we 100% apply it, but it's just totally off, right? And this is again, how does it get off? Because there's no real talaqqi, right? Which madhab functions in this? So I'm very happy for example, a modern Maliki to come along and say, this is the Maliki school, A, B, C, right? Ibn al-Hajj, the Maliki said X, bid'ah is haram for this reason. It's a continual discussion that's refined, right? But I don't think that's the case. If you see the Malikis, they don't follow Ibn Hajj. Like Ibn Hajj, he had a whole issue on, against the Mawlid, and you can read that in his Madkhal, and it's very, very useful. But like they didn't agree with him. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not going to find the late Malikis agreeing with him. So you're not part of a continual discussion. You are a bid'ah. The reason why you have a crazy idea that's different is because you are a bid'ah. Because it's all over the place. Um,